I never imagined life would change at 65, not after all the years of predictability, quiet dinners, lonely breakfasts, evenings, so silent, I could hear the walls breathing. That silence, it didn't arrive all at once. It crept in, slowly, like dusk. In winter where you only realize it's dark when it's too late to turn the lights on. I wasn't chasing adventure. I wasn't even chasing peace. I was chasing anything that felt like something. So one morning, without telling a soul, I booked a ticket, a solo tour to Morocco. Not out of courage, not out of wanderlust, just a need to be somewhere I didn't know, because everything I did know, every routine, every empty chair was eating me alive. The airport was a blur of strangers and neon signs, people rushing to destinations that meant something to them. But me, I stood there. A shadow among stories. Invisible, forgettable. And then he appeared. He wasn't remarkable at first glance, a young man helping an elderly couple with their bags, careful hands, a quiet smile. There was no performance in him, just presence, the kind of presence that felt like sunlight in a cold room. Later that day, I struggled with my suitcase in the hotel lobby. Of course. The handle jammed. Of course. No one noticed. Except him. Need a hand, ma'am? His voice was calm. Steady. Kind. He had a name I hadn't heard before. Rafi. He was 20-5. From a town called Segal. Striking. Yes, but it wasn't his face that caught me. It was his stillness. In a world obsessed with speed, Rafi was a pause, and I hadn't known how much I needed one. The next morning, we ended up side by side on the tour bus. I didn't plan it. If anything, I was still committed to solitude. But Rafi had other plans. He asked me where I was from, what I used to do, what I loved, what I missed. His questions weren't for entertainment. They were gentle excavations, uncovering parts of me I'd buried so long ago, I'd forgotten they were even there. When I told him I was a retired librarian, he lit up. My grandmother raised me on stories, he said. She believed books were people who waited patiently to be heard. I don't know why that made my throat tighten. Maybe because no one had asked to hear my story in a very long time. There was no flirtation, no awkwardness, no suggestion of anything but warmth. Still something stirred, a recognition, a thread between two lonely worlds, unexpectedly touching. When we reached a small desert town, he turned to me and said, "Let's go where the tourists don't." I blinked doubt. There was no pressure in his voice, only invitation. And maybe that's what convinced me. Because what he was offering wasn't escape. It was presence. Company, life, unscripted. We took a shared taxi to a nearby village. The road was unpaved, the air thick with sunlight and dust. We booked separate rooms. He made that choice clear without words. No assumptions, no implications. It was the most respectful thing anyone had done for me in years. That evening, we walked through the local market. Colors I couldn't name, spices I couldn't place, children running barefoot, laughter echoing through alleyways. He told me about his grandmother, how she raised him with little but gave him everything, how she believed kindness was the only real wealth. And I told him about my husband, how I lost him to cancer, how the silence after his death wasn't peaceful, it was violent, and how I'd been shrinking ever since. Rafi didn't respond with sympathy. He listened, truly listened, and when I paused, he didn't fill the space with pity. He gave it room to breathe. Later, as we sat on the rooftop terrace, the city murmured around us. Street sounds, faint music. I was mid-sentence when he reached out and touched my hand. Lightly. No pressure, no claim, just presence. I didn't pull away, because in that moment, I remembered what it felt like to be felt. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the shutters like gold dust. I heard a soft knock. Breakfast. Rafi stood outside, holding 2 cups of mint tea. He didn't ask if I wanted company, he just offered it. And for once, I didn't overthink, just said yes. We sat by the open window, bread still warm from the vendor's cart. He spoke about people not in facts, but in feelings, he said. I don't want to just know people, I want to understand them, their silences, their shadows, their broken places. I hadn't realized I'd stopped chewing, because something in me knew he wasn't trying to impress me. He was telling the truth. As we wandered through sunlit alleys later that day, He told me he never really knew his parents, how his grandmother raised him to pay attention to the things most people missed. He said he often felt like a stranger in his own world, and in that sentence, I saw myself. I told him things I hadn't said aloud in years. How my identity dissolved after my husband died, how I stopped feeling like a woman and started feeling like wallpaper. Present but forgotten. Rafi didn't interrupt, he didn't soothe. He understood. By a quiet riverbank that afternoon, he turned to me and asked, "Do you miss being touched?" He paused, not just physically, but emotionally. It was the kind of question you don't expect, the kind of question you don't know you need. My breath caught. My eyes burned. "Yes," I whispered, more than I ever thought I would. He didn't rush to respond, didn't pretend to have an answer. He just looked at me, and in that look, there was no pity, no discomfort, only acknowledgement. That evening, he cooked dinner using vegetables we bought that morning. I helped, uselessly. He laughed at my awkward peeling technique. I laughed with him. It was the first time I'd laughed like that in years, not politely, but freely. Music floated in from the street below, rhythmic, alive. Rafi stood up and held out his hand. "I haven't danced in decades," I warned. He smiled. "Then, let's start now." We danced on the terrace. Badly, imperfectly, under stars I hadn't looked up at in so long. I forgot how vast the sky could feel. His hands were sure, but not possessive. His eyes anchoring. When the music faded, we didn't step apart. We simply stood there, suspended. He reached up, brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. "You are beautiful, Eleanor." And in that moment, I broke, because I had forgotten what it felt like to be seen. That night, I didn't lie awake and longing. I drifted into sleep with a strange ache. But it wasn't pain, it was peace. The next few days moved like a dream. We didn't chase time, we strolled through it, in a garden with crumbling stone walls. He watched a lizard crawl across a bench and said, "Stillness is loud, if you listen close enough." And I remember thinking, so is grief. He noticed things about me no one else had. The slight tremble in my hands, the way I paused before answering certain questions. He didn't try to fix me. He just stayed. I'd told myself love, at my age, was just a faded postcard, something that once existed, but had long since vanished. But Rafi's presence defied that lie. The way he looked at me. It wasn't nostalgia. It wasn't fantasy. It was now. And it was real. One evening, we sat in a quiet courtyard with jasmine in bloom. He turned to me and said, "You've lived, Eleanor, but I don't think you've ever been loved the way you deserve to be." The words sliced straight through me, not because they hurt, but because they healed something I didn't know was broken. Tears came before I could stop them. That night, he was quiet, not distant, just careful. When I asked what was wrong, he spoke, with weight. "I'm afraid of crossing a line, but I can't deny what I feel." I told him the truth. "I'm afraid too, but I'm not confused." We sat close, hands touching, but nothing more, until I looked at him, and for the first time in decades, I asked something for me. "Would you kiss me?" He didn't hesitate. It was not lust. It was not escape. It was a kiss that said, "You, not invisible. You are still here. You are wanted." The next morning, I expected this thing of regret, but there was none. There was only stillness. Sunrise. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. Still, I felt it, the end creeping in. Moments like this, they don't last. Not in the real world. The world has rules, timelines, judgments, and we had broken every one of them. He saw the fear settling in me, not the kind that panics, the kind that knows, the kind that understands beauty doesn't last forever. He reached for my hand and held it like a question. "Let's not ruin the beauty of this by rushing into fear," he said. And for a moment I believed him. But fear always knocks. Not with thunder. With a whisper. "You don't belong here. What will people think? Are you foolish, naive?" The world wouldn't see healing. It would see scandal, suspicion. Foam. But what we had, what we shared, was nothing like shame. It was the opposite. It was resurrection. Our final day came, too soon. The sun rose with the quiet guilt of a thief. We moved through it gently, pretending the end hadn't arrived. At the market, he reached for a pomegranate. "You know," he said, "my grandmother always said this fruit was sacred. It holds sweetness in 100 broken pieces." I smiled, because that's what we were, weren't we? 2 broken pieces, somehow made sweet. At the airport. There were no long speeches. No drama, just silence, and eyes that said everything. You gave me something I didn't even know I was searching for, Rafi said. I wanted to give him poetry, a parting phrase worthy of the soul he carried. But all I could say was the truth. You reminded me I was still alive. And then, he was gone. When I returned home, the walls felt smaller, the light, colder, everything, muted, but I was not the same. Friends asked, what changed, why I smiled more, why my voice felt lighter. I didn't tell them about Rafi. They wouldn't understand. They'd ask questions with all the wrong words. They'd see age, they'd see scandal, they'd see inappropriateness. They would never see what it really was. Love doesn't always ask permission. Sometimes it simply arrives, and when it does, you either open the door, or you spend the rest of your life wondering what could have been. Weeks passed. Life crept back into its old rhythms, and then one day a letter arrived, handwritten, from Morocco, from him. He didn't write to rekindle. He didn't ask for more. He just shared what he wanted me to know. He told his grandmother. A version of our story. Not the details, just the feeling. She listened quietly, and then smiled. She said, sometimes, souls meet at the right time, even if the world thinks it's wrong. That sentence broke me. And healed me at the same time. We will never share a house. We will never celebrate anniversaries. We will not grow old together, because we already were, and never needed to. But that doesn't make it any less real. What we had was a burst of truth in a world built on lies. The betrayal wouldn't have been what I did with Rafi. The betrayal would have been not letting myself feel again, not letting myself choose again. And yes, maybe it was selfish. But for once, I chose me, not out of rebellion, not out of fantasy, but to remember what it means to be human. And now, I carry it quietly, with reverence, a secret flame. No one can see it, no one needs to, no one needs to. It is mine, and not even time can extinguish it.